What's good, Relocation Football League fans? It's your boy Smitty here with a long-awaited Sliders video. Man, I'm sorry that it has taken me this long to make another Sliders video. For one, the Sliders that I had originally still lasted a good minute, so I didn't need to change anything. But I just made the changes approximately 5 weeks ago, which is, you guys for about that time been asking for the new Sliders, but just have not had the time to even get down to making a video specifically on that until now. So I made sure to take advantage of this because as soon as I get done this, I gotta go do other things. And so yeah, just wanted to make sure to get this out there to you guys. I know I said I was going to get this out there, but it's been hectic, especially you guys know what's been going on with the coronavirus and stuff. But man, a lot of work that I've been doing, especially for the league, man. So I had to get that stuff done first, but I'm here with the Sliders video. And I'm going to be letting you guys know not only with the sliders that I'm using, that the RFL's been using for the past 5 weeks, since week 12, but also I'm going to be showing you guys how to change anybody's ability if you don't know it already in the game. And that's essential for these sliders. You have to know how to change a person's abilities to whatever you want. Technically, I'll show you how to do it to whatever you want, but in this case, the sliders will be attacking the issue of the quarterbacks being far too accurate, and I'll give examples, of course, through RFL statistics. So first things first, I'm in the main menu here. I'm going to go to just the settings here in the main menu. Honestly, I haven't done anything in the main menu here. I mean, everything is at default. This says all pro. I don't think this affects the end game, so I mean, I just left this whatever you had it as. I don't think this matters, and that's just my personal opinion. If you feel it does, you can check out somebody else's opinions on what you think is best for the game options in the main menu. But honestly, I feel like this doesn't really affect what happens in the franchise. I know other people have different opinions on that, but I just feel that way. Everything's at default, even from the player skills you can see here. Like, that's at default. CPU skill default, nothing's changed there. No, I don't want to save those. So there's nothing. You don't really have to change anything, especially with my sliders. You don't have to change anything for the main menu. Just leave it as is. Then you could go to your franchise. So I'll open up the NFC files for the RFL just so I can go in and start showing you guys the sliders. So we're here in the NFC file, the RFL, and first things first, last time I forgot to go to the settings and show you the league settings. This is pretty much all preference, but of course you need the main essential things for the sliders here, like the difficulty change that I've made. It was at all pro, now it's at pro. And the reasoning behind that is because at all pro, quarterbacks were still a little bit too accurate. And somebody asked me a question on the last sliders video asking about why would, because I talked about it. They asked me, why would you lower all pro to pro? Just wanted to know the reasoning behind that. And the reasoning behind it is in order for your sliders to be realistic, you have to make it realistic due to error. And what I mean by that is if your players aren't making errors, realistic errors, like for instance, a quarterback throwing 60% of completing 60% around roughly most of his passes a game, that's a realistic average. You got your guy completing 70 to 80, that means that your sliders are not realistic if he's doing that on a consistent basis. Now, what I mean by error also is just the fact of players making mistakes. When you have the correct amount of mistakes that are usually made in the game getting played throughout, that shows the realism of your sliders. And so I realized that all pro guys still don't make as much errors as they should, unless you drastically change the sliders, which I don't want to do because it can make the game a little bit wonky. And so I put it down to pro, and so that way we already know that on pro, guys make mistakes, for instance, like mess up sometimes on coverages, and sometimes mainly this is for quarterbacks though. The big reason is because you want your quarterback to be realistic when it comes to throwing the football. Your quarterback is the most essential part of simulation CPU versus CPU sliders, man. So if you can't get your quarterback to throw realistic averages, your whole game's going to be messed up. So I mean, I realized that pro quarterbacks play more realistic in terms of inaccurate passes compared to completions and things of that nature. So that's a big reason on why I moved this to pro, for multiple reasons. Of course, I got the gameplay style on simulation. Any other style will not make it as realistic, even though we know Madden has its issues making simulation all the way, but this of course is the best way to go for CPU versus CPU sliders. This is all just preference. Whatever you want for your league, you go ahead and do that. The big thing I'm going to be showing you guys on how to make ability changes. Keep these on. Now, I've seen guys usually just turn the abilities completely off. I don't feel like all the abilities are a problem. I feel like the biggest abilities that really hurt have been the quarterback abilities of the DEADEYE, which we'll get into. And so I keep these on, and I found a way to adjust those so that way you can be able to just make sure that you have the right, you don't have those OP abilities, and you can still keep the ones that you like in the league, so you can differentiate the play between individual players within your league. So I keep the superstar abilities on. I'll show you that, like as I said earlier on. And rest of this is just preference, just about. Okay, here and then clock management. 15 minutes, of course, full length. All our games are full real time. And to make it for a realistic amount of plays throughout a game, put it at 13 seconds for the minimum play clock. And of course, you need the accelerated clock on, because if you put 15 minutes without accelerated clock, expect a 4-hour game, and you don't want to be calling that or watching that for that long. So, and the plays, it's gonna be ridiculous. Probably like 100 plays by each team. So these are, I found, to be the best spot for realistic length of game and play. And for the rest, like I said, it's just you go ahead and decide what you want to do. I don't want to show my commish settings because it could give the password and everything towards my league. But you can see here in the team settings, if you want it to still look a little bit more realistic without too many pop-ups, I mean, you're always going to get that little icon underneath the player. So I would recommend just turning everything else off, and so you can have less things on the field, so it can look like you're actually watching a game. Can't do anything about the circle underneath. Wish you could, but you just can't. So that's it for the league settings, and of course the settings you guys have all been waiting for. I haven't done XP sliders at all this year. I've done that in years past. I did not do that this year. I wanted it to be a challenge for guys to upgrade, but it seemed to be a little bit too much of a challenge, so I honestly feel like that's something I might attack for next year. But I still don't want XP sliders and players to boost so fast, because that can hurt your league in the long run with too many OP guys just deving up extremely fast, and you just don't want that happening. So here we are to the gold of all this, and that's the CPU versus CPU sliders. Now both sides in player skill and CPU skill is the exact same, so I'm gonna just read off from the top here from the player skill. So the change here is that the accuracy, due to the fact that the difficulty has been changed from all pro to pro, I've tuned it up to 40, and so that pretty much combats them being a little bit more accurate, because for one, they're going to be less accurate due to the fact that the difficulty went down, but with it at 40, they'll still be able to pretty much throw similar and to a realistic quarterback average in terms of 60s in percentage wise. So I found this to be a pretty good sweet spot for that area. And then of course I didn't have it 50, because I realized that sometimes even at 40 you got guys still completing high percentages. But the great thing about it is they're not doing it on a consistent basis as we had going on throughout the league earlier on before week 12. And so that's a big change right there. And this also helps out with, well, it was helping out. The big reason why they actually went down to 20 was because of the abilities, which will be nullifying anyway. So I found this to be a pretty good spot for quarterbacks. I didn't change anything with the pass blocking, receivers, catching, and anything at default. I left it because it seems fine to me. I don't think you need to adjust it. So run blocking, receiver catching, pass blocking, that's all good. The fumbles stayed the same from the last sliders. It really wasn't much that I changed at all from the old sliders to these sliders, but it was a couple things, of course, like the difficulty, the ability changes that makes a huge difference. And then at the fumbles, the reason why this is up so high, of course, fumbles have been a huge problem in Madden this year. Didn't want to turn them up to where they aren't a factor at all, because fumbling is a part of the game. And then also at 68, it also to an extent helps out with those guys who have those big hitting abilities, such as Enforcer. I honestly feel like it's good to have Enforcer in the league, but of course there's still a lot of OP fumbling from time to time that can cause people a game, which me and the CU has talked about, probably looking at if they don't nerf that for next year, just getting rid of that ability in general and trying to figure out something else that they could use. If so, but still not all the way on that. But the fumbles at 68 for that reason. And here's another change. We had the defensive reaction time and the coverage beyond default, and that was because the accuracy, we tried to make the defense better so that the quarterbacks who had the abilities and guys who were completing most of their passes wouldn't complete most of their passes. And I realized that once you turn the difficulty down to pro, you turn the accuracy down to 40, there's no need to boost up the defense to be more great in coverage. So the reaction time, when we had it up before, it was kind of making things worse because guys were jumping routes. And you want guys to jump routes, but I'm talking about guys who are mind readers, literally jumping in front of the receiver and turning before they even made a move. And so keeping this at default is essential. You don't want that up because then you're looking at low-scoring games, a lot of turnovers, and just not interesting play when you have this or pass coverage up. And I turn pass coverage back to default as well. One thing I have noticed with sliders throughout year to year to Madden is when you have the sliders typically around default, you get the best play out of them because, at the end of the day, EA or of course the people making this are going based off of what happens in the NFL. Even though we can tell they're a little bit off, which is why they provide sliders. If you keep it close to default, you usually get a good result. But sometimes default, you got to change it a little bit. But I didn't think you had to do that at all when it comes to the coverage. In terms of interceptions, that stayed the same at 40. You don't want it at 50 because you'll start seeing too many interceptions. Once again, defensive games. There's nothing wrong with defensive games, but when there's like 3 interceptions a game by a quarterback or 5 total in the game, that's just too much. Usually, you get 1 to 2 interceptions thrown by a quarterback in a game, and that's from both sides. And so like interceptions, this is a good spot. You don't want it to be too low where they're dropping everything, and you don't want it to be too high. So 40, I found to be a good spot for that. Tackling, I left that at default. Don't really change that because you want those big plays to actually happen where, guys are breaking tackles and they can create really good plays. So I think that the tackling rating should be very important with it at default and on if they can make the tackle or not. So that pretty much explains the reasoning behind the sliders for the skill base for CPU. Like I said, I put it both. I have, I guess, a little bit of a superstition thinking that, if this player skill sliders and the CPU skill sliders are different, that it may affect the play. But of course, it's superstition. There's nothing I can prove there. But for that reason, I just put both the same in terms of sliders. So that's my reasoning for that. Everything else stayed the same, guys. Nothing changed here for the special teams. The field goal, kicking, power at 52, accuracy at 48. And we already know there's nothing you can really do about the field goal, kicking, and punting power so far in the punting period in this game, because it seems like wherever you change this, it really doesn't change what they do. You're still going to get those extremely long punts, and you're still going to get those terrible punts at the same time. You're still going to get weird field goal kicks missed when there's no wind and things of that nature. So, I guess this is the little change I tried to make to it. And you guys can use those. Pretty much you can use whatever you feel is right here in this special teams category. But these are our sliders. Of course, all of this will be in the description as well, so make sure to use that. The game options, you got the injury on 20. This has been the case throughout the entire season. And I found it to be a really good spot this year. Injuries were not really a thing of the past for the RFL. There has been injuries, of course, we know in the RFL, but it has not been a lot. With the injuries being a little bit up there and moving this to 20, realize that injuries have now became more of a factor to the game. I still feel like it's not enough injuries that happens within our league, but it really was close up there in general for me, I'd say, for injuries that happen throughout a season. So 20 I felt is good. You can probably raise this up to 25, but then of course you'll have quite a bit of injuries if you're used to that. But didn't touch fatigue or threshold, left that at default for the same reasons for the last sliders, because you turn fatigue up, then guys start not getting tired, and you're seeing just a bunch of scores and a lot of high scoring games. And there's nothing wrong with scoring. Everyone likes scoring, but when it's just too much going on and guys just consistently driving down the field, it just doesn't add that realism of the defense, being there or giving people opportunities to get on the field that are backups. So I say leave fatigue at default. If it's lower, you definitely don't want it lower, because then you're going to see terrible games in terms of fumbles and just turnovers in general, and you don't want that happening. A lot of low-scoring games you get if you lower the fatigue. And then as for the threshold, I gave my piece on this. You raise it up, guys get too fast, and if you put it down, I always like putting the threshold down. Well, actually, it's opposite. If you raise it up, I believe that's when the speeds aren't so separated, which I used to like raising it up because it makes it a battle for the offense to move on the defense. But also for the player threshold, if you got it up there like that, usually you see, a lot of low-scoring games, not a lot of big plays being made at the same time. And some games can get boring more so than interesting. So that's why I decided not to do it this season. I might tamper with that for Madden 21. For the threshold going down, you don't really want it down, because if you put the threshold down, then pretty much the abilities, you want to see guys, of course, if they're faster than the guy, run by the guy. But in real football, that doesn't happen. Just because you're the fastest guy on the team and you can outrun that guy doesn't mean that you're going to beat him on the fly every time. And I know it may sound crazy, but it is the truth. Sometimes if they have the leverage and they are already off you, we know that they can blow by you, which is going to happen still. But not every time is Tyreek Hill going to blow by a cornerback, even though that sounds ridiculous. But you can't say there hasn't been times where he hasn't been able to get by a guy. Guys are playing like 10 yards off of him and stuff like that. So if you put it up too high to where the speed is too much of a factor, then the attributes won't even matter, and you'll see just a bunch of streak routes getting called and quarterbacks just throwing nines all day, and that gets a little bit boring. Exciting for the first couple of bombs, but when you see it every game, it's not going to be fun to watch. As for the penalties, I left all of this at default. I didn't touch anything here. I feel that the sliders this year, the default slider this year for penalties have been pretty good. I know it's been a couple that has been going wild in some games, but I feel as though it is player based. So if your players just don't have good, discipline, you usually see those guys getting the penalties. So of course you can do what you want here, but I've got the penalties at default. I didn't see a problem with them this year, so that's why I have them where they are right there. And so that's it for the sliders. Now it's time to move on to show you guys how you can change the ability of any player that you want, which I'm pretty sure this has been a video made of. I didn't look at it. Somebody told me that somebody has made a video on how to do this before, but I haven't looked up one, and if there's not one, you'll learn today. So first off, let's go here. So we'll go to retire, and we'll create a new character. So say for instance, and I was recording for this before, so I remember things that I was talking about. I had deleted the old sliders thing. I was the video I was making at first because I felt like I didn't cover everything well. But here we go. Say for instance, you got a player on your team. Say you're the Raiders, and you see the guy Caesar. Whoa, what kind of last name is that? Aquaviva, I guess that's how you say it. So say for instance, Caesar Aquaviva. You want to change his abilities, and this is essential towards these sliders to get realistic gameplay out of the quarterback. So let's go to change role, and we'll go to player. And of course you want to be the active player, because you don't want to create a player. You want the player that's in the league so you can change his stuff. So here goes Caesar Aquaviva right here. You click on him and you become Caesar, of course. And you can do this for all the players in your league whose abilities you want to change. So once you become the player, you will then go to my player right here. Look at his card. And the ability that you don't get when you're not a player and you're a coach is you can now change these abilities. I already changed them because, like I said, I made a video. I was trying to get this video out to you guys before, but I didn't cover it well in my opinion, so I deleted it and restarted it, and so I could cover everything well. And before he had, let's just go give him what usually the quarterbacks have that kills the gameplay with the abilities. So it's the Deadeyes. I've been talking about the Deadeyes. The Deadeyes pretty much make it where these guys are 100% all the time in certain situations that you can read from here. Passers with this ability have perfect accuracy on all throws inside the numbers. In real life, that's not real. Okay, so sometimes you even got guys wide open, and these are pro quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers can miss a pass over the middle inside the numbers. So this is unrealistic. So this is what has been raising the I'd say the percentages this season with the old sliders and everything, and this year in general with CPU versus CPU gameplay, is the fact that they're not missing passes because they can't with these abilities. So you want to take this off, and pretty much once you get rid of these two abilities, you will then have the ability to, you'll be able to see the difference in play with the quarterbacks, and it'll be more realistic. They won't be as OP and just too accurate when it comes to throwing the football. So that's a great thing. So let's go ahead and get a look at the inside Deadeye here that I changed it to. And just like I did, you just press X on the ability you want to change. You'll see all the abilities he can get, and you can pick any ability you want your player to have. And that's the great thing about this. Now what I did was for our quarterbacks, I didn't want any Deadeye. So lofting Deadeye, no point in having that. Leapfrog, not every quarterback going to be able to jump over everybody. So what I did was I changed it to Last Ditch for everybody. And what Last Ditch does, as you can see there, is they have a higher chance of completing a pass animation, like pretty much while being sacked. And pretty much, honestly, and just throwing the ball away, which is something that Madden has not done too good of a job at all this year with the quarterbacks. Is just like a lot of quarterbacks just sit there in the pocket and take a sack. So Last Ditch kind of helps out with throwing the ball away, even while they're getting sacked, which is great. So, yeah, this is a good ability, I'll say, for all the quarterbacks to have. And then for the pocket Deadeye, of course, not every quarterback's going to be able to juke. Not every quarterback going to be able to spin. And speaking of these two right here, I don't even give the dual threat quarterbacks these abilities due to the fact that, if the pocket quarterbacks can't have their two abilities be useful, then neither should the dual threat quarterbacks, because now you're giving the dual threat quarterback teams more of an advantage over those quarterbacks that don't run out of the pocket. And I know they kind of do have an advantage as scramblers, but at the same time, that's the reason why they try to do the Deadeye thing with the pocket guys, because they too are pretty much, they have a threat throwing the ball more so than the dual threats have, pretty much the same, as the dual threats have running the ball. So I don't even give those first two abilities, are usually Deadeyes, and I change those with, of course, Last Ditch for the reasoning, like I said, on that, throwing the ball away. And for the pocket Deadeye, I usually use Conductor. And the reason why I put Conductor is because this is an inactive ability. This is an ability that won't be used in CPU versus CPU gameplay. It's pretty much getting rid of your ability, but what it does is it's making sure that your quarterback is not having a Deadeye ability and throwing the football and completing high percentage of passes. Once again, we got roaming Deadeye here. We don't want that. We got Bulldozer. Guys aren't running over guys, juking, spinning. Not every quarterback can do that, so we can't give those. Then we have the anchored extender, which is while in the pocket, as the ability guaranteed to break the first sack. That's pretty good, but not every quarterback has that ability. So once again, I can't give that to a pocket guy. If I can't give that to a scrambler, then I can't give that to a pocket guy, so I can't use that. And once again, another Deadeye right here with long range. So the only ability left to choose would be Conductor. Like I said, it's pretty much emptying your ability slot here, but it's going to make your quarterback play realistic. So boom, we give them that. And you can even change X Factor abilities. I don't know why they have the locks on here. Usually you can be able to change that. It's saying that this player, unfortunately, probably has an error on him where it says he's unlocks at overall 85, and you can clearly see it says 87. But yeah, I wouldn't worry about that. These are usually open, so this actually works. You can change the ability even with the X factors to whatever you want in this. And if you're afraid that these might not save, they do save. So you saw that I made those changes there. Let's just give him the Deadeye. Let's give him the Deadeye because these are what he had before when I changed them. So let's just give him the Deadeye thing so you can see I made the changes. These were abilities that he did not have before. Okay, so you see those are on him, and I'm going to leave now, and I will retire and become coach of the Raiders. Okay, and we'll see if they stuck, which they usually do. Well, not usually. Every time I've done it, they've stuck. So now I'm the coach of the Raiders. I go to the roster, and we'll get a look at Aquaviva here, and a look at his abilities. And boom, you see it right there. You can't click on it like you could when you were the player, but the abilities that I changed them to do stay on the player. And you can do this for every player in your league. All you have to do is just retire as whoever you are, go to that player, change their abilities like I showed you, leave, and they will stay as you change them. So yeah, that's a great tip for guys who didn't know that. We've done that for our players to have them play more accurate to how they've played throughout their career. And so, yeah, that's pretty much it, man. I hope this video really helped you guys out. It's a big reason on why I held off on this, because I needed time to explain this, of course, in depth, like I did here. And I didn't want to just put out a video out there, not really explaining everything in detail on why the sliders are what they are, and why it's essential to be able to change the abilities. But yeah, that's going to do it for me. It's your boy Smitty, RFL Commissioner and play-by-play commentator. Hope you guys enjoy and use these sliders, and I will see you guys next time in the next RFL game or video, man. 10 days away from the RFL playoffs, man. Anybody's keeping up with the league, check us out, man. It's been a great season so far, but until then, I'm out. Peace.